Welcome into this week's episode of Craze's Corner. We're going to be pumping the brakes on some fantasy football players this week. Last week we did some bold predictions, and almost all of them were positive for the players. Today we're going to tell you some players that we are not so high on, so you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for that. But first we're going to get into some news. We're going to start with a sad story. Unfortunately, Dwayne Haskins passed away earlier this week. It's a terrible loss for everyone. He was going to be competing with Trubisky in that offense to play quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and unfortunately, he will not have that opportunity. He was one of the first players to ever interact with my page, so that's what I will always remember about Dwayne Haskins. Moving on to Melvin Gordon, who has been in contact with the Ravens about possible contract discussions. So that's a situation to keep an eye on, whether or not they do bring in Melvin Gordon. They could look to bring in another veteran running back, which would definitely hurt J.K. Dobbins' fantasy value. And the last piece of news, we're going to get into some smoke screen season. It's around this time every year that people start throwing out all these rumors and everything they're hearing. But here are some of the biggest stories that I've been hearing out of the draft world. Desmond Ridder is most likely going to be a first-round pick. There's been multiple reporters who've come out and said a lot of teams have a first-round grade on him, and that he's going to go a lot higher than expected. Some even think he could be a top 20 pick. So that's something to keep an eye on. Matt Corral to the Panthers. Apparently the Panthers are really high on him, as well as Willis and Pickett. So Corral could be an option if the Panthers trade back, or possibly even at 6. And then the biggest surprise, I think, of this week is Trayvon Walker. He's been gaining so much buzz to possibly be the first overall pick in this draft. Do you guys think the Jags should pick Walker, or should they go with Hutchinson? Let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host your own virtual press conferences from your phone. It's extremely easy to use, and you can find it on the Google Play and App Store, so make sure you go check that out. And now let's welcome in our guests. We have Jeff and Will from Media. Welcome in, guys.
Hey, Zach.
What's that?
How you guys doing tonight? Everyone doing good?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, yeah, this is draft season. Lots going on. Who do you guys think should be the number 1 overall pick? Do you think it'll be Hutch, or do you think it'll be Trayvon Walker?
Neither, to be honest with you. But...
Yeah, it's difficult, man. I don't have a dog in the fight. I like Walker, but I like Hutchinson as well. I'm a Michigan Wolverine fan, so I don't think they can go wrong with either one.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the worst year in recent years to actually have the number 1 overall pick, because there really isn't that top guy that you're like, this guy is going to be the number 1 overall pick. Normally at this time, we already know who it's going to be. Teams are positioning 2nd and 3rd, trying to get their guys there. But this year, you truly don't know whether it's going to be Hutch or Walker. They could surprise us and take someone completely different. We have no idea. But let's get into the show. This week's show, we're going to be pumping the brakes on some players who, are ranked a little bit higher consensus than, most people have them. I'm going to start us off by pumping the brakes on Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is not a guy we'll be drafting this year. He's projected to be a top 15 running back across various platforms that I looked at earlier. Last year, he finished as the RB12, which, on paper, you have the RB12. Good chance he'll finish back in the top 15. But he was extremely inconsistent. He had 7 games of under 10 points and half-point PPR last season. They brought back J.D. McKissick, which is big for the reception totals of Antonio Gibson. That ceiling is not there anymore. He only had 40 receptions last year, and that was a number that was supposed to be way higher when everyone's hyping him up before the season last year. His yards per carry dropped last year as well. He was only on the field over 70% of the time in 2 games, and in those 2 games, J.D. McKissick was out with injury. So with J.D. McKissick coming back, They're still got other running backs involved, even when J.D. McKissic wasn't on the field. I don't think they fully trust Antonio Gibson to be able to handle a load and stay healthy. So for that reason, I am fading Antonio Gibson, cautioning everyone out there. There's a lot of risks that come with this guy, and someone who owned him last year because I thought he was going to put up that reception total. He really was extremely annoying to own because he would put up 5 points one week, and then the next week he'd have 20, and you never knew what to do with him. But it was never a good thing. What do you guys think about Antonio Gibson this season? Are you guys all worried as well?
Yeah. I'm the Commanders. Yeah, the whole team I'm worried about. I'm
Quarterback included.
Look, they're under congressional investigation and about not paying their fair share to the NFL. Mm-hmm. You talk about a team that could easily implode. And then the way this investigation's rolling out, we all know it's going to come up later this year. It's not going to happen in the next month or two. It's going to get to about September. And if it's true that Daniel Snyder and them had two sets of books, one that they told the NFL and one that they were like the mafia, this team is going to boom.
I have some faith in Ron, the coach there, that they might be able to keep things together. But, there is a lot of legal issues there. There's also reports that he withheld $5 million of refundable money towards season ticket holders. And when it comes to gypping the NFL of some money, they're going to make sure that this guy is no longer around. Jeff,
you talk about fantasy football is Daniel Snyder, right? This guy's been a fantasy ever since he bought the team.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how he still owns the team, to be honest. I would have.
Neither do I. Neither do I. But
anyway, now that it comes to the NFL's money.
What's that?
I said, now it's the NFL's money. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now this come to money is nothing to do with the whole personal situation. But go ahead, Jeff. What do you think about Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, it's not the ownership that makes me not want Antonio Gibson. The fact that they usually have like a good 5 to 6 running backs that they go through. I'm still afraid of Jared Patterson back there. Not to mention J.D. McKissic and then that darn toe. It's always something, a toe or a hamstring, man. And I'm like, maybe he amputates his toe. I'll be good. But it's dudes have missed games because of a toe. And trust me, I can imagine that it is a painful injury, but I'm like, that's what you need to be a good running back. So if you got any issues with your toe, I'm not picking you. Maybe a good RB4, something like that. I'll have him deep stash on my fantasy team. But yeah, I'm not jumping to get this dude to start 1, 2, or 3 as my running back. So.
Yeah, we saw toe injuries derail AJ Green's career. So
exactly. Maybe for the season we can start the toe index, where Jeff breaks down the players whose feet, ankles could be a problem for the 2022 season.
Yeah, we gotta get Jeff and a doctor in here and give them their own segment talking about feet.
Here it is.
There you go.
Decide whether or not this guy's feet are going to be a problem come season. Let's move on to Jeff's first player. Jeff, who are you going to be introducing as a player you're pumping the brakes on?
Man, and I hate doing this because this is one of my go-to guys when I was able to. I've had him for 3 years in the Dynasty League, but Tyreek Hill, man, I think, his production, I think is going to drop. And I won't say necessarily it's because of Tua. I'm going to say he's going to face a better quality defense out of the Patriots, the Bills, and possibly even the Jets. They got a defensive-minded head coach. They're not there yet. Who knows? So I think it's going to be a little bit different than what he's been facing in the AFC West here and there. So, and I think that's who they're going to build their defenses to stop. They're going to look at stopping Tyreek Hill. He's the person that they're going to focus on in this offense. So I'm pumping my brakes on him, man. He's not going to be in my top 2 or 3 receivers this year, unfortunately. He's going to find out what it is to be truly a number one option in an offense.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely an extremely talented player. My questions come with Tua. I'm not sure Tua can support him being fantasy relevant and Waddle, as well as having Gesicki in there as well. I think that there is a lot of mouths to feed for a quarterback who hasn't proven to me that he can feed multiple players at once. We saw last year even just Waddle and Gesicki were inconsistent. When one did well, the other one normally didn't. You add Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. It's not a piece of the offense that I would like to have. When it comes down to the Dolphins offense, I don't think I'd want to have any of the running backs. And unless you can get extreme value, I'm not going to be touching any of their wide receivers because I think it's going to be an inconsistent offense all around. Maybe Tua surprises me. He definitely could. But for me, it's just too much inconsistencies coming from there. One of the reasons I don't like Antonio Gibson, so I'm definitely going to stick with that. Will, what are your thoughts?
I don't know, man. Tyreek, I don't know. I don't know. I could see it going either way. Honestly, I really could. Sometimes you just know, like, okay, a guy's ceiling is what he had last year, and then switching teams, especially a wide receiver, right? It's probably going to drop off. But he is who he is. He's consistent. I think you'll know by week 3 or 4.
Yeah, because you give him the ball in open space, and he's going to make the defense miss, right? Tua doesn't have to hit him on those long balls. He's just got to get him the ball.
Yeah.
And he should be okay. Just that inconsistency, and I'm not sure the touchdowns are going to be there like they were in Kansas City.
It's really not a question of Tyreek, right? It's a question of Tua. Do we believe that Miami can get their offense together to take advantage of Tyreek's skill set? That's the question from a fantasy perspective. It's not Tyreek.
Yeah. We could see them use him in the sort of a Debo role where he gets some touches out of the backfield. So there is the positives to Tyreek. There's just a lot of questions that go along with it. He's definitely going to be a boomer bust guy. He's either going to hit or he's going to bust. So if you do end up with Tyreek Hill on your roster, you're going to want to have some solid wide receiver depth.
So question though. So when we're talking boom or bust, if it's a bust if you take him in the top 5, and is it boom if you take him at the bottom of round 1 and into maybe round 2?
I don't even know where I would take him. I think he could be a top 5 wide receiver still.
Yeah.
But I feel like he could also fall into that wide receiver 20 range if the offense doesn't quite pan out. And that's where if he's wide receiver 20, he's going to be taken in the top 10 for sure for wide receivers, and that's a bust to me.
So if you're sitting in the last pick of the first round in a snake draft, traditional draft, and he's on the board.
No.
You have back-to-back picks. You're going to pass twice?
Yeah. I think so.
Then that's a bust.
Yeah, like I said, I'd rather have the running backs you can get at that position. DeAndre Swift, you can get there. There's some other, Alvin Kamara has been falling. There's other guys I would rather have than Tyreek Hill who I think are safer, especially when they're on the field when it comes to Alvin Kamara. But it's would you take him at the end of the first?
Would I take him when?
At the end of the
first round. Yeah, back-to-back picks.
It depends, man. It really does. Looking at who else is there, I don't know.
I'd probably take him at the end of the second. Would probably be, I'd be.
So to me, that means if that's what we're all. I don't disagree with you guys. I think so. If you had the first overall pick and whoever you take a running back, and you get to pick the end of round 2 and the start of round 3, and he's sitting there, do you take him?
Yeah.
Wow. I just because if he's on the Chiefs, there's no way he's there at the end of round 2.
No way.
Right.
Right.
But on the Dolphins, he's definitely that's around where I feel like he'd be a value when you have the number one running back and then pair him with a guy with a ceiling like Tyreek Hill, because you'll have that consistency at the running back position. But I could see him having multiple games, single-digit points this upcoming season. And that's what scares me, taking him that early.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a tough world to be. Put him on so many other teams, and I feel like, he'd be great. The Dolphins just scare me, and I'm glad Zach's not here to hype up the Dolphins, because the Dolphins have had enough hype lately. I think we need to calm down a little bit. But, Will, let's move on to your first player who's on a team that is also getting a lot of hype right now.
Amari Cooper. I just don't know. Injuries, and then I think there's going to be an adjustment phase. And I'm not sure the coaching staff in Cleveland is going to be in. I think they're going to try to find balance. I think they're going to try to balance run with the pass, and that's never good for the wide receivers in fantasy.
It's tough because will Deshaun Watson even be there is a question. Will he start the season? If he starts the season, I feel like Amari Cooper should have a good year, depending on what they do at that wide receiver 2 position. Because if they bring back Jarvis Landry or bring in Will Fuller or someone like that, that's going to take away from the target share that he should be getting right now. Yeah, he should be up there in terms of target share, really only having to share with David Njoku and Kareem Hunt at the moment. Donovan Peoples-Jones, sure, but I'm not really worried about Peoples-Jones stealing Amari Cooper's touches. But if you bring back Jarvis Landry, I'm worried about Jarvis Landry taking some of his targets away. Will Cooper stay healthy? It's another question you got to look at. Issue. Yeah, there's a lot to go wrong with Amari Cooper. Not sure kind of where he's been going in drafts, but he would have to fall to me to a position where I would expect Deshaun Watson to miss 4 to 6 games. So he's not going to be great those 4 to 6 games with Brissett starting. And then after that, he will have a high ceiling, but he'll also have that floor, right? Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, he's not on my wide receiver radar right now. There's still too many things in flux in Cleveland. As long as they got Baker Mayfield still on the roster, he might end up throwing to him. And if he's throwing to him, I'm definitely out on him. So, I've never really been an Amari Cooper guy, only because, like when he was with Dallas, I was looking at CeeDee Lamb. I'm just looking at other things. And then, his health is an issue at times. I like guys that like to stay on the field. The availability is the best ability. That's my strategy. So until guys are able to prove that they're able to stay on the field, if he is the number one receiver for Deshaun Watson, that is something that you do have to keep at the back of your mind. But until I see him starting week 1, I can't, I'm not jumping in there and putting him in my top 6 wide receivers.
Yeah, currently he's being, he's projected around guys like Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman Jr., DK, Keenan Allen. They're all within 10 points projection on the season according to Sleepers. So that's not really a category. I would take Pittman over him. I'd take all those guys over Amari Cooper right now. I'd even take a guy who's behind him in DJ Moore over Amari Cooper for this upcoming season. There's a lot of question marks that for a guy who's projected to score a lot of points, who I think is going to be, Deshaun Watson's here. He's going to be the new hotness, and Amari Cooper is going to disappoint.
I guarantee there'll be, in some of your drafts, someone that takes him in the first round.
Probably in some drafts, I could see it happening. Yeah, not in my drafts, because I don't.
Everybody's gonna fall in love with Watson, right? That's all it's gonna take is Watson showing up and putting some drills in, and the video getting shared across social media, Right?
Making a throw with no rush.
Right. Like Malik Willis with that pass.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful pass, but like I said, it wasn't in pads, nobody in his face.
Mm-hmm.
Great pass. So once you watch the Brown players go up as you get closer to draft.
Yep, for sure. And that's not a place where I want to be, is when they're going up, because, Chubb will have his value. He doesn't have a high ceiling just due to Kareem Hunt being there, and Kareem Hunt doesn't have a high ceiling due to Chubb being there and Amari Cooper. The only Brown I want on my roster is David Njoku this upcoming season, because he's got an extreme amount of potential now. Like Hooper's gone, with Deshaun Watson being there, but that's pretty much maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones if they don't bring in another wide receiver. But I think I'm mostly staying away from that that field there. But let's move on to my next player. I've finished as the wide receiver 11 last year in PPR. He went on an insane streak when his starting tight end was out. I'm talking about Hunter Renfrow. When Darren Waller was out last season, he averaged 14.3 points in half-point PPR format without Waller. And in the 12 games with Waller, he only beat that average twice. So that's something to monitor, is when Waller's there. He wasn't quite seeing the targets and the points. Now you bring in Davante Adams, who is an absolute monster, who will take even more of Hunter Renfrow's targets away. He's going to take the red zone work. He's already got the connection with Derek Carr for those scramble drills. Davante Adams is going to be the guy that Carr looks for first, not Renfrow. He might have some PPR value. I think he's going to be inconsistent. I don't think the targets are going to be double-digit targets every game. He was around that 8 or 9 target range for most games last season. I think that number drops. He's not a freak athlete. He's not going to jump. He's not going to catch those jump balls when it comes down to the red zone. That's Davante Adams' job. He will make some plays for sure. It's not a knock on Hunter Renfrow. Just for me, the fantasy value I don't think is going to be there for a guy who people are going to look at and be like, this guy finished as a wide receiver 11. Davante Adams is going to come in and take some pressure off of him. But in an offense, as Zach's brought up before, Derek Carr has not thrown for 32 touchdowns since before he hurt his leg. I think he breaks that threshold this year, but I think that's more on the back of Waller and Adams as opposed to Renfrow. I don't see the ceiling, but I think he will have some value in PPR. Just don't expect him to have constant value every week of 15 points, because that's not what you're going to get at Hunter Renfrow, in my opinion, this season. What do you guys think?
Whew. Will, you mind if I start, man?
No, go ahead, dude. I'm just.
The only thing is, looking at Josh McDaniels, I looked at Hunter Renfrow as the prototypical guy, just like he did with Wes Welker, just like he did with Julian Edelman. That's the only thing. I'm like, you couldn't ask for a better dude than Renfrow. I'm like, you've got this guy that's already your prototypical slot guy for his offense. So I want to go back, look at how I believe it was Wes Welker did when the Patriots had Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and just see what happens, see what that target share is like. Because I got a feeling that's what, and I'm not saying that Davante Adams is Randy Moss, but he is probably one of the top wide receivers out there. And I'm definitely not equating Carr to Tom Brady, but I'm just looking, at some things. I can see Adams still drawing double teams, although you still have, Waller, you still have Jacobs where he's able to dump it out of the backfield. I've never looked at Renfrow being somebody that somebody's going to go after in the top rounds anyway. He's definitely middle round material. But I think he might have a shot at going above what he did last year. Now that the offense is really going to be stretched out, you truly have a number one receiver in Davante Adams that you're going to have to plan for. You're going to have to watch Waller. Who does that leave around the middle? It's Renfro. So I don't know, man. I'm looking like he could maybe do better than he did last year just because of what is added to this offense and Josh McDaniels' track record with producing great slot receivers. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
you would think, like when I looked at the numbers, I was surprised at how much better he did without Waller. Because when Waller's there, he was the main focus of the defense. So it's not like, him not being the main focus is going to be new for Renfro. He wasn't the main focus for majority of last season. So that's not something that worries me that way. And then as for Josh McDaniels, I think we saw Josh McDaniels elevate the offense to Cam Newton. And I don't think Derek Carr is Tom Brady. I think he's a gunslinger as opposed to Tom Brady. He doesn't want to take those short passes. And I think Josh McDaniels will build the offense around Derek Carr's skill set, who just got his massive extension. And I think that most of this attention for Carr is going to go to Adams. And we've seen that Adams can beat double teams anyways. Will, what are your thoughts on Hunter Renfro?
I'm just going to say 2 words, Derek Carr.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
$140 million man.
There's no way I would have
$120 million man.
There's no way I would have signed him to that until he put it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's
because there's no excuse this year. There's no excuse unless Adams and Waller get season-ending injuries. There is no excuse for Derek Carr not to put up 4 touchdowns a game.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see how good Davante Adams is without someone who can drop the ball in tight spaces accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Right, those no-look agreements, right, there at the line of scrimmage, Aaron and Davante knew what they were going to do. That's not Derek Carr. And that's not McDaniel.
No.
I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, you took guys and you put them in a system like Davante that, honestly, Aaron was the coach on the field. Aaron didn't have to account to anybody. He ran his offense on the field the way he wanted to run it. That's not Josh McDaniels, and that's sure the heck not Derek Carr. So when we talk about Renfro, in a weird way, I think Jeff could be right. I think teams they're gonna be like, I don't believe you can beat us if we take away Adams. And if you got to rank who you're gonna take away next, it's gonna be Waller. So you're gonna live with Renfro with your third corner or your safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
only thing that saves them is it's the AFC West and it's gonna be shootouts.
Yeah, that it will. So just looking at Sleeper's projections here, pulling it up. Guys currently projected to score less points than Hunter Renfro, according to them. Jerry Jeudy, Juju, Chris Godwin, Brandon Cooks, Allen Robinson, Cortland Sutton, Adam Thielen.
Ooh.
Like, I don't have him in that same tier with those guys. Who are number 1s and number 2s on their teams. Yeah. Hunter Renfro is the number 3 target on his team right now.
He might be the 4th.
Might be the 4th behind Jacobs.
Yeah.
So
he might be the 4th.
And then with the emergence of Bryan Edwards as well on the outside, he's going to take some targets away. It's hard for me to put him in that category.
Had Renfro gone to Green Bay, it'd be a different discussion.
Yeah. If Renfro was in Green Bay right now, he'd be the number 1 receiver.
Right, he would be. But
then I'd put him ahead of those guys because I think he's a talented guy. But in an offense where they're going to run the ball for sure, I just can't see a way that.
Can we just say that Derek Carr is just a nicer version of Baker Mayfield? Can we just say that, right? Without the luggage.
I'm thinking the perfect for Baker Mayfield to go to back up Carr.
Baker's not going to go back up anyone. He's not going to go back up anyone. No one's going to trade for him to be the backup quarterback.
So Baker better ask for his release now so he can go sign with the USFL before they kick off on Saturday.
There you go.
Or the XFL.
This transitions perfectly to Jeff's next guy. Go ahead, Jeff. Introduce the guy that you want to talk about on the same team as Hunter Renfro.
This is just unfortunate, man. I really think guys are going to still try to draft Davante Adams very, very high, and they're going to be disappointed at the end of the year. You're talking about being double teamed in Green Bay when you have a quarterback that's still capable of getting you that ball by his ab-living skills and everything else. I don't see David Carr having that same type of skill. One, the arm talent as Aaron Rodgers. Two, the escapability as Aaron Rodgers. Three, just, having the experience of being those two playing together. You're hearkening all the way back to Fresno State days. Those days have changed, man. So I don't, you definitely, Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback, but he is not Aaron Rodgers. Even Aaron Rodgers' current time, being an older quarterback, still I would take Aaron Rodgers over Derek Carr. And I think he's going to see a lot of double teams, and that's why I'm saying I think that ball is going to go some other places. So, those guys that try to draft Davante Adams as like a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver, I don't think he's going to pay the dividends that he does when he's in Green Bay. Just like you saw at the end of the NFC Championship when they started to key on when the Niners started to key on, not the championship, because it wasn't the championship. It was the the divisional game. But you were able to see when they keyed on Davante Adams, everything was shut down. And so I think that's what the defenses are going to do in the AFC West. Denver's got a good secondary. The Chargers, they've got an improving secondary. The Chiefs, that might be the only team that gives up points depending what they do in the draft. So I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Davante Adams in this AFC West than it was where he was in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, the only benefit is that he's actually got other players on offense that can, take some of that pressure off him. He has one of the best tight ends in the league now that defenses have to look out for as well. And he has Hunter Renfrow there, as well as, Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake out of the backfield. So that's the only thing. Like, defenses will try and double team him. But you can't double team Davante Adams all game because Darren Waller will eat. Darren Waller will absolutely
I think that they're going to look at, though. They're going to we've lived with Darren Waller. We've lived with Hunter Renfrow. We've lived with their running game. This is the guy that we want to take away. We'll deal with that stuff. But we're going to take away Davante Adams and see if you can beat us with what you haven't been able to do in the last 4 years. We're going to see if you can beat us with just those guys that you got, especially with the new head coach as well. It's going to be interesting.
I do also still like the, college connection. It was a while ago, but that connection's still there. They're good friends. They'll be practicing all off season. They'll have Josh McDaniels up there. They'll be working on things to get him open. You don't have to give Davante Adams much space on the line, and he'll get right open off the bat with his footwork. So I see the argument. The touchdowns probably will be a little lower than what they were in Green Bay, but I think the yards will be higher than what they were in Green Bay. What do you think? Your problem is Derek Carr, so your problem is probably the same as the Hunter Renfrow situation. But
I'm not drafting Davante Adams in the first round, and I probably wouldn't draft him until the end of the second round, at the earliest. I'm just be honest, because it's. So was he a creation of? And I'm not saying Davante Adams is not a good wide receiver. There's a lot of good wide receivers in the NFL. So the question is, was it Aaron Rodgers? Right? And that's, we're all going to find out here in about 5 months.
Yeah. I don't think it was. I think he has the best footwork in the game. The way he can get open without having to use his hands. Probably him and Keenan Allen are probably the only two that do it to that level. He's a big-bodied guy who's going to catch a lot of touchdowns.
I think the The real question for the Raiders is the over-under of how many games into the season before Davante Adams has to be sent back to the Packers.
I don't think you will. But you never know. You never know. Will, let's move on to your next guy. Who you want to talk about here?
I'm throwing a Dallas guy out there, so all my neighbors can be happy. I am so tired of everybody. Zeke, come on, man. This is the most overrated running back in the NFL right now. He's a good player. He is not what everybody makes him out to be. If he was on any other team but the Cowboys with his performance the last couple of years, people would be talking about they're not drafting him. Right? If he was on the Jaguars doing this, or if he was on...
The Jaguars already shown that with Leonard Fournette that you don't even get a chance.
Right.
You can play good and still get cut.
If he was on the Jets, right? I mean, no one would give him the time of day, but I think he's a good player. I don't think he's right for their offense. I don't think he's good for their system at all. Mm-hmm. And I think when they put him on the field, they force it's kind of like, as a Viking fan, it's like when we had Herschel Walker. Didn't really ever fit. And when he was on the field, it just was, you could just tell the offense didn't sync. Mm-hmm. The guy didn't match the system. And I think it's obvious now that, honestly, Pollard should be the number one running back. Honestly. And they should, but they've even said that, honestly, the rumors here is they would have cut it. If they didn't have to eat all that money this year, they would have cut it. And so there's going to, in fantasy football, everybody wants to hype this guy. This is going to be his year, and it's not going to be his year.
It's tough for Zeke because he is talented, as you said, but I agree that the system really doesn't fit him there with Dallas. When he's on the field, more than likely that it's going to be a run because Pollard is better in the backfield when it comes to receiving.
Yeah.
Or, if Zeke is in the backfield, he's not really as big a receiving threat, so he's probably staying in the block. So that pretty much takes him out that way. Yeah. So I definitely do agree to an extent. I probably won't have him on any of my rosters. It's tough because if he was on a different team in an offense that would utilize him more, he could be fantasy relevant. But on Dallas, I think I'd rather have, Dak and CD as opposed to Zeke. Not super excited about Pollard's value, just due to the fact Zeke's still going to be there to eat away at it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a tough situation for me. What do you think, Jeff?
I think, and I hate saying it because I liked him coming out of college. I liked him in his rookie season, but it seems like he's lost a step. And it also seems like he was more of a product of that line. Now that line being broken down, he does not look as electric, if that's the word to use, as Pollard. He looks slower. He looks less powerful. And he looks like when they give him the ball, it looks like they're forcing the ball to him, and it's just not it's just not a good look or now even a good fit in that offense, man. He's definitely, as far as receivers, he's not in my top. I mean, my running backs, he's not even in my top 8 right now. If I'm drafting, there's so many other guys that I'm looking at drafting ahead of him. Just because I'm looking more at Zeke, God dang it, Dak throwing the ball rather than him, handing the ball off. That was kind of like the safety blanket. Now it's Dak's team. He's throwing the ball and he's choosing to do what he wants to do. And it doesn't seem like Zeke is in a high pecking order. Now I think it's going to be CeeDee Lamb, Schultz, Pollard, Gallup, then Zeke. So
don't you see a lot of similarities between what happened with Seattle? Like, you have a running back that's actually a good skill set if you want to build the offense to his skill set. But it seems like the Cowboys have decided, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, they want to build around Dak. And, honestly, they should move Zeke. If they can move him, they need to move him. After June 1, when they can spread the cap hit, they need to move him. Because I don't understand why you're keeping him. You're never going to use him. You've obviously made clear you want to build the offense around Dak. So I don't understand why you're keeping him.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can.
But he'll go in the first round. He will go in the first round of your draft because someone will think they're getting a steal at 9 or 10 with him because they're going to believe that the Cowboys are back. So all my Cowboy friends, please be in my leagues this year so you can draft this guy in the top 10 because that's what I'm hoping for.
Would you take him at the end of the second if he was there?
Depends who the wide receivers were.
Yeah. Because I think that's probably around where I have Zeke right now. I probably wouldn't take him at the end of the second, beginning of the third.
Yeah.
But
if there was a run on running backs,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't take a running back in the first round, and I was at the end of the second, and it was him and I don't know who do we want to throw out there?
James Conner.
That's what I'm looking at. It's hard when you got to think about like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
No, don't even bring up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's the number 2 running back on his team now.
That's what I'm saying. There's a case that could be made if you're taking the guy.
No case to be made for Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Still the starting running back for the Chiefs.
He's not.
Zeke.
He's not. It's Ronald Jones.
Do that.
It's Ronald Jones.
Let's say Gordon signs with Baltimore. I think you can make the argument he's the number 1 running back in Baltimore.
No,
he might be sitting there. If him and Zeke are sitting there at the end of round 2, who are you taking?
Neither.
Oh,
I don't want. If Gordon's on Baltimore, I don't want Gordon because he's still gonna be. He might be the number 1 running back, but that's Lamar Jackson's backfield.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins is an extremely talented guy, and so is Gus Edwards. I don't want anything to do with that backfield.
Okay, let me put another.
I'm taking Connor over Zeke.
Cordell Patterson.
No, I'm taking Zeke over Cordell Patterson, but I don't want either of them there. I would take Akers. I would take Akers, Aaron Jones, Devin Singletary, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne.
I'll take Etienne and Akers over Zeke.
Yeah.
Jeff, can we get Cordell Patterson on the show just for 5 minutes? that would be great.
I would love to.
Oh shoot, that would be great.
But I'm not touching Cordell Patterson in any of my drafts this year. I was thinking about bringing him up, and I was like, "There's no point." Everyone already knows that Cordell Patterson shouldn't be drafted high, so there's no point in bringing it up again. But let's move on.
There you go.
Let's move on to my next guy. This is a guy who will be a second-year wide receiver on an offense that some people are excited for. I'm really not sure why, but I'm going to talk about Elijah Moore with the New York Jets. I think that offense could take a step forward, but last year he only had 3 games over 15 points in half-point PPR. I don't believe he can be a target hog in that offense. I think he's going to be a boom-bust guy week in, week out. Some weeks he'll put up nothing. Other weeks he'll put up, 20. So he could finish high, but he's not a guy I want on my team because of that inconsistency. The Jets do not believe he can be the number 1 wide receiver because they have been in on every single wide receiver they can imagine putting on their roster, and they've come up short on everyone. I don't be shocked if they take someone in the draft or continue to try and push to trade for another wide receiver. I think he's going to be touchdown dependent when it comes to those big plays, is whether or not he can capitalize to score. Being on a bad team in a tough division, I've seen too many people hyping him up. He is ranked ahead of all those guys I mentioned when talking about Hunter Renfrow. Plus, he's projected ahead of Michael Thomas. And there's no way in hell this guy's going on my team before Michael Thomas. And no way he's going to be on my team before Mooney or Juju, Chris Godwin, Brandon Cooks. I just can't see how he is, in some people's top 15s. And if not, he's in their top 20s. And to me, I don't see him being that kind of wide receiver. Maybe at the end of the year, he finishes as the wide receiver 20. When you take into account the fact that he put up, 5 or 6 bad games, that's not a guy I want on my roster. Pump the brakes. I'm not going to be drafting him unless he is my, 4th or 5th wide receiver. I don't trust that offense yet. And I believe with Corey Davis is still the number 1 wide receiver there. They bring in 2 tight ends, CJ Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, with Michael Carter out of the backfield. A lot of mouths to feed. And for a guy who's going to be boom bust, I'd rather have, other guys that can put up higher ceiling. What do you guys think about Elijah Moore?
I think you made an interesting point at the end there, Zach, about who the Jets brought in. Conklin played a great role with the Vikings last season as because the Vikings ran a 2 tight end offense.
Yeah.
And they used him. He was able to block, and he could get out of the backfield and catch. It tells me that the Jets may be stacking their offense towards a more 2 tight end offense.
Yep.
And a run first to try to take the pressure off the quarterback situation and put the quarterback in easy situations. You throw here, third and manageable. You do 1 read, 2 reads. That's it. And until he gets some success under him. So if that's the case, I'm concerned about either wide receiver with the Jets right now.
That's where Corey Davis excels.
Yes.
We saw that in Tennessee that's the offense Corey Davis is built for. He's built for that, pull the linebackers up and just toss it to him over top. Whereas Elijah Moore is not that guy, in my opinion.
But even then, I still don't think.
No, I don't trust him.
I think it's be like 3rd and 4. Their offense is going to be 6 yards in the first 2 downs and be 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that offense is even built for the tight ends to just do 5 yards and turn around.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at least at the start of the season, I think the Jets, if you can get a Jet more, somebody like in the mid rounds, and he's your 4th wide receiver. Yeah, because I think near the later parts of the season, he could come on once they get themselves figured out what their identity is going to be on offense. But I think it's too much of a risk to put, honestly, anybody on the Jets right now in the top 3 rounds.
I don't think I'd be taking him till 7th.
Yeah,
probably.
And it could be a good deal
max,
at 7,
depending on where it goes. Yeah. He could be. Like I said, he will have those boom weeks, and he will finish higher than it felt like he finished when he was on your team. Kind of like Antonio Gibson was last year, where if you had him, you're like, damn, this guy sucked, but he finished all right. And I think that's going to be Elijah Moore. Too inconsistent on a bad offense. I'm out. Jeff, what about you?
I mean, I'm looking at those things the same way. 1, I don't trust Zach Wilson.
I don't know.
2, he came on towards the end of the season after Zach Wilson came back, and they were just kind of like, just throw the ball, man. It seemed like that's where he was like, I'm just going to throw the ball to Elijah Moore, and things kind of worked out. But it was already when they weren't competitive. Nobody was really caring about the Jets. They were already being blown out in some of these games. A lot of it was garbage time stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the only person I'm looking at and still wouldn't be later on in dealing with the Jets is Michael Carter. I'm not really thrilled. I do like Corey Davis, but, yeah, Elijah Moore, I think he could turn out to be the same guy. Actually, not even as good as Amon St. Ra, who kind of benefited in that same thing where there wasn't another guy to go ahead and target. And they're like, we're out of this thing anyway. Let's just throw the ball and see what can happen. So that's why I think a lot of guys got that same excitement from Elijah Moore, not realizing that, hell, nobody's really trying to play the Jets anyway. So at the end of the season, we've already seen what can happen when you're really pressuring Zach Wilson and planning to shut him down. You'll shut him down. So I it's the typical thing that people do in fantasy where they get really high on one guy that looked like he really exploded towards the end of the season instead of realizing it's the end of the season on a bad team where nobody's really taking you serious. So
he got hurt.
My son and allowing him to beat me up, and people are like,
he got hurt near the end of the season, but he got hurt near the end of the season, which is why he didn't finish off the season. But I think he could be a guy who he'll have flashes, but those flashes are not going to be worth the duds he puts up.
Exactly.
I think he's a pretty much must avoid unless he's your 4th or 5th wide receiver. But yeah, let's move on. Jeff, who is your next player? We got 2 more to go before we close off the show. So Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, man. I've never been really high on this guy, but he will have some games where he just blows up and scores like 50 points or so. But it's A.J. Brown. Once Derrick Henry is back, I think it goes back to being the Derrick Henry show. He might have a couple of weeks of, getting a touchdown or 2 here and there. But other than that, again, as long as Derrick Henry is healthy, it's his show. And I think that's one thing that they're going to look at as well, especially in that playoff loss. It's like maybe we need to get back to not having Tannehill try to do everything, put everything on his shoulders, and just run the damn ball. King Henry is back, and I think they're going to make sure he gets the ball early and often once again. As long as he stays healthy, that's never good for A.J. Brown's stats.
Yeah, I think it caps the ceiling of A.J. Brown, but I feel like it also benefits him to the fact where he's not the number 1 option on the offense. So, you don't have the entire defense looking at him like you did last year when the pressure was on Ryan Tannehill cracked. He wasn't able to live up to it, but you take that pressure back off Ryan Tannehill, and he will go back to how A.J. Brown finishes a top 10 wide receiver in 2020 when Derrick Henry was there putting up stats. The pressure was off Ryan Tannehill, and he was able to just kind of run that play-action game, hit A.J. Brown deep. They weren't forcing the ball to A.J. Brown like I thought they were doing last year. They weren't trying to overwork him, which, leads to injuries in his case last season. Exactly. Lots of injuries. That's what concerns me about him more than anything. But I'm fading him a little bit, but I still think he's a top wide receiver. And he can put up the stats to back it up.
Top 8?
Yeah.
Top 8? Are there 8 other guys, though, that you could see taking over him?
I could see situations where other guys take over for him. But he's in my top 10, I think, wide receiver wise. Top 8, he's probably right around that 8. I think I'd rather have him than Tyreek right now. I'd rather have him than CD, Deontay. Just a couple other guys up there. I'd rather have him than Mike Evans. So, I think he's right around in that range, though, just to have him a little bit above. The injuries, I think, will be what makes or breaks his season. Because if he gets hurt, obviously. But if he stays healthy and he plays 15 games, I think he will finish in the top 10.
I always think it's hard for fans, especially in fantasy, to be able to look ahead honestly. And I think what happened last season with the Bengals getting to the Super Bowl is I think we have to be ready for a fundamental change on what teams produce the best fantasy players and what teams don't. And I think this is the year where you got to be careful not to draft on what people did before and make sure you're being clear in your glasses, your vision is clear of where the NFL is recentered, right? So it's the Chargers, it's the Bengals, it's the AFC West at the wide receiver position. I don't think Tennessee is going to they'll do okay. They may make the playoffs, depending on how their division does. They could win their division. I'm just leery of A.J. Brown. I'm leery of Derrick Henry. I think if I'm going to use draft picks, I'm going to go with offenses that are designed for modern football, and that is not the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. Like I said, I think, with Tannehill, the problem was all the pressure was put on him. And we all know that's not Tannehill. You can't put, he can't put the team on his back with the injuries to Julio. Bring in Robert Woods, I think, is big for the offense.
Yeah.
Not sure fantasy value if, he could fill that Corey Davis role better than Julio Jones did for sure.
Yeah.
It takes away.
I think Tennessee drafts a wide receiver. So if they get I think wide receivers may drop in this draft. I think there'll be good wide receivers available at the bottom of round 1 and in round 2. There could be and look, young guys are making the transition to putting up numbers their first year. Yep. Right? And that didn't used to be the case, right? It used to be all the wide receiver takes a year to adjust to the. I think it's clear as day now that the guys can come out of college and immediately contribute to a modern NFL offense.
Only if they're playing with their college quarterback.
So Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson played together?
I was just talking about last year with Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Davante Smith, all.
Yeah, I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think AJ, God, wide receivers so stacked in fantasy this year. To me, it's there's 3-4 rounds deep of wide receivers now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that I like about Robert Woods being with Tennessee, because remember, we don't need Robert Woods to be a speed guy or anything like that. It's his route running in his hands. So that's why I'm not worried about his knee or anything. It's his route running and it's his hands. And that's something that Tannehill may not have had before, really, in that secondary role. Julio was just broken down totally. Yeah. Corey Davis was decent at times. He had to grow into that role.
Yeah.
But Robert Woods is a more experienced receiver, that I think Tannehill is going to benefit from having him. And it could have him pulling away from A.J. Brown a little bit more to looking towards Robert Woods as a security blanket. So,
yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet on the talent of A.J. Brown to shine through, because obviously he's a better wide receiver than Robert Woods. And I think the coaching staff knows that they have to get him involved through the play action to be able to keep up in games if they want to be competitive. You can run Derrick Henry a lot, but you got to take those big shots over the top, and those big shots over the top are not going to beat to Robert Woods. They're going to beat A.J. Brown. So that's where I stand. I think he will be a top 10. But I definitely see the argument against it. Will, let's hear your last guy before we move off the show.
So I'm going bold, and thank you for saving me to the end. So
blasphemous.
Curse me out. Look, I think Tom Brady is due for a drop. I'm going to say it. I'm going to own it. Could be wrong. I just think that quarterbacks don't know when to leave. And everybody thinks they can play to their 40 or 50. And maybe Tom Brady will do it.
Well, he did play till he was 40. And he played pretty damn good.
I'm saying, but everybody thinks they can do it. But with the drop off, when the drop off comes at quarterback, it comes. It just drops. And I have a funny feeling I think Tampa Bay's in for a rude awakening this year. And the reason why I think that is I think that Gronk, look, there's a reason why Gronk won't commit.
Gronk won't commit because he doesn't know if his body can actually withstand another season.
Okay, and he
can make enough money doing other things that he doesn't need to come back.
I think a lot of people think around Tampa Bay that team may not be what we all think it is, and it starts with Tom. And like I said, this is a bold statement. We're doing a bold show about who could be a bust. I'm not drafting him. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not drafting him. He has to be there sitting on the board late for me.
He will be. He was last year. Coming off that big year, because everyone thought the drop was last year.
I think because he did okay last year and because he left and came back, that he's gotten a lot of offseason press. And I think it's in people's heads. And I actually think that people are going to draft him. I would not be surprised if he's a top 10 quarterback in average draft position.
I'm okay if he's the 10th quarterback in draft. Last year he was around the 10th quarterback. You pick him up in the 10th round, and he was one of my steals of the draft, and he turned out all right. I'm never betting against Tom Brady. I hate the Bucs. Not a Tom Brady fan, but he's proved he can defy age. The drop-off will come eventually, but for Tom Brady, man, I just can't.
Well, I'm betting this year, and I think people are going to overvalue him. That's just my gut. It's like Zeke. People are going to fall in love and think this is it, right? What do we all do in fantasy draft? Oh, I got my steal. No one's going to take him in this 8th round. No one's going to take him in the 12th round, whatever it may be, right? And there'll be another quarterback sitting there that will give you better numbers consistently each week because they're either in a better system or they have better young emerging players around them.
I think the hype around Tom Brady will die off as we get closer to the season. You know, he's unretired. He's done all that. He's made his, headlines for the. I think Todd Bowles is going to keep this team together. You know, Antonio Brown's not there anymore. They're going to keep that whole aspect of it out. They brought in what's his name from Atlanta there to be the wide receiver 3.
Your guy.
Yeah, Russell Gage.
Okay.
They brought in Russell Gage, which I also like. Whether or not they bring back Gronk, they still have Cameron Brate at tight end, so I'm not super worried there. Leonard Fournette about to have 100 targets out of the backfield.
Now that that could be Tom's saving grace.
Yeah,
if it becomes just I'm going to dunk it and let.
And Fournette's going to do amazing with those touchdowns, and that's why he's going to finish as the running back too. See last week's episode for that argument. But Tom Brady will be okay. I'm not betting against Tom Brady. Will can bet against Tom Brady all he wants. But when Tom Brady's sitting there in the 10th round again, we'll see how the draft pans out. But if he's around the quarterback 10, 9, 10 being drafted in that area, you're probably going to find him on a lot of my rosters again because, he finished as the quarterback 3 last year, 5,300 yards. And with the wide receivers he has, Chris Godwin coming back, Mike Evans, does he really need to do everything? No. He can throw short passes. He doesn't have to have that big arm. He's extremely smart. He calls the plays on the field. Especially now that Arians gone, so this is going to be Tom Brady's offense. Leonard Fournette's going to get his 100 targets, and he's going to do a lot with those targets.
See how hard it is to be a Carolina fan?
Yeah.
You just explain away why you're going to lose from day one. We can't beat them. We never thought we could beat them.
No, we can beat them if we bring back Stephon Gilmore. That way we have the corners to go deep with any wide receiver core. But
that's a whole nother discussion. Why that hasn't happened.
What do you think, Jeff? What do you think? Tom Brady? Is he going to fall off?
He's going to fall off eventually. I'm not sure that it's hard to say that this is the year. Mm-hmm. It could be, but I'm not putting money on it. That's it.
No one said anything about money. There was no money in this at all.
No, this is just your fancy reputation on the line here, Will. When Tom Brady comes,
this is my third, not my first, my third.
Tom Brady's gonna watch this. He's gonna be like, "God, this guy counted me out.
Just because
time to go throw for 5,000 more yards."
Well, then I expect every Buccaneer fan to send me $1 because if that's what happens, and Tom Brady says it, I'm worth a small percentage of that income.
There you go. I'm not betting against Tom Brady. He's proven to me. I think if he knew he was done, I think he would have just stayed retired. He had the opportunity to stay retired. I think he thinks he has some left.
But they never know they're done. That's the problem. Adrian Peterson been done for 5 years and he's still playing.
Yeah, but he's not Tom Brady and he plays running back, not quarterback.
Will is bringing this up because he's experienced this as a Vikings fan with Brett Favre. It's almost the same scenario where they're dragging him back. Like, just give us one more year. We'll get it this time.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
We'll see.
But this is Tom Brady, not Brett Favre.
That's what I'm saying. That's hard to say anything.
Brett Favre was great, but you could tell he was done before he started. Like when he retired.
No, because you think about him in that NFC Championship game when they lost against the Saints. Vikings could have easily won that game. That might be one of the greatest NFL games between him and Drew Brees in the history of the league. That playoff game.
Yeah, but during the season, you could tell that he wasn't the old Brett Favre.
Look at his numbers from that first year he played with the Vikings. That was one of Brett Favre's best seasons with that roster.
I don't know.
I think the ghost of Favre has got Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, it's not me this week. It's not me this week. So
right. Something's working in Canada.
All right, Jeff, we didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, I was.
No. You're
No.
again.
There it goes.
I
Well,
remember saying Tavares Jackson. Bring Tavares.
Yeah, Tavares Jackson. There you go. The nightmares of Tavares Jackson.
Yeah.
There you go.
yeah, let's close it off there. We had some bold predictions for guys we think are not going to do so well. You can check last week's episode if you want to see some guys we are confident on. There was some surprises last week for sure. You can check me out on Instagram at Pro Football Craze. You can check media out at Media MPC. New version of the app will be releasing soon. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you stay tuned for that. It's going to be big. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you tune in next week. And thank you guys both for coming on and doing this with me.
All right, Zach.
No problem, Zach. Thank you for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.